Welcome to The Roofer Show with your host, Dave Sullivan. You found the podcast that helps roofing contractors grow their businesses, make more money, and have more free time.
Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome to The Roofer Show podcast, the place to be if you want to grow a more profitable roofing business. I'm your host, Dave Sullivan, the roofer coach, and right next to me is John DeLaurier, Pete's Roofing, Savannah, Georgia. Hey, what's going on down there in Georgia? Anything? I hear there's some kind of disturbance.
Yeah, fortunately, we got hit. We missed the major hit from Hurricane Martin, but we're still trying to work through Hurricane Helene. So really busy time for us. Trying to just work through the process, pre-qualify people. But yeah, it's a crazy time right now.
Wow. Well, I'm sitting down here in Cabo, Mexico, just kind of hanging out. I got a bunch of kids running around here, so it's pretty crazy. And look at this, my eye. I got some kind of reaction to avocado. It'll teach me to eat guacamole. But anyway, regardless, tell me what's going on down there. And I'd like to talk about this because you just got slammed, and which is why I had to do the last 2 weeks podcast by myself. And but that went pretty well because that was number 400 and 401. So we've been doing this for a while. You'd think we'd be better, but this is number 402. And I got some good stuff to talk about because I'm going to get into this storm. Talking with John this week about what he's doing, how's he handling this, and how's he turning this into a real opportunity because he was prepared and really has a great system and process to handle all this. So let's get into that. Tell me the story.
So you can, it's a hard thing as a business owner and then as a roofing contractor, whenever, the sales cycle of a roof is not really that quick. People are not replacing their roof every 5 years or 10 years. So how do you manage the personnel, the team size that you have in your business to handle thousands and thousands of inquiries all at once? Well, I've been very fortunate and very thankful that we worked together a long time, and Proline has helped us with managing all the incoming leads with speed to lead campaigns. So if somebody fills out a website form, they're getting reached out to right away. Two other big players for us that typically are not a huge lead source is Yelp and Thumbtack. And we have both of those. Anytime somebody fills out a form or inquires about service, we just side note, we set all of our stuff for Thumbtack to maximum. So we get pretty good quality leads. And the more you work with Thumbtack, the more they'll send you free leads, et cetera. There's other guys in our market that use Thumbtack really well. But all those inquiries go directly to Proline's phone, which is Kathleen's number. So Kathleen gets every text message that ever comes through, and anytime somebody fills out a website form, she's able to pre-qualify all those leads. And they're coming in quite a bit. I mean, at one point they were coming in about every 10 minutes. On Thursday, we looked at over 1,200 homes in 3 different neighborhoods that were all damaged. So it is hard as a business owner to, understand, or how can you go from a smaller team, we have about 5 people on our team, to somebody who handles thousands of leads all at once. So I've been very pleased to see that we're able to handle those leads as they're coming in.
Okay. So, well, you mentioned Yelp and Thumbtack. What's up with that? I've never heard you using any of those sources.
So we'll get a few leads a year with those two sources. It's just people are, the stats are showing it, the analytics are showing it, that they're 400% up for roofing searches because, like I said, those 3 neighborhoods alone, there was over 1,200 homes affected. So you can only imagine the internet searches that are going on. And then Yelp dominates a lot of organic search, and Thumbtack has a lot of ways to gather those lead sources directly. So it is 2 different ways to gather leads, and we don't spend any money on, we do the basic ad on Yelp, which is very, very affordable. It's about $19 a day to have have all the options. And so both of those have been very good for us. We will probably turn all those ads off when it gets wintertime. But for right now, we want to be seen and want to be first to those homes.
How's LSA doing?
Abysmal. LSA is abysmal.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know what the algorithm is or what's happening, but something about local service ads is just not really working. And the way that they have set it up so that anyone around the state can just say, I service Savannah. And then all of a sudden you're having, competing from a dozen roofers to 500 roofers. And then they're charging you $106 a lead too for Thumbtack and Yelp. Again, it's just at $19 a day for Yelp, and it's anywhere from $20 to about $100 depending on the lead for Thumbtack. So, and they're qualified. They're answering all these questions that we already asked. They're telling you all the things that we need to know to make sure that they're serious about the services that we offer.
Okay, because LSA used to be one of our best lead sources, and it was less expensive. And I think everybody's just jumped on the bandwagon, and it's just gone crazy.
Yes,
but even so, Thumbtack, they sounds like they're pre-qualifying some of this, but you still must get a lot of garbage here. How do you follow up with that and choose where you're going to spend your time? Because obviously, what are you able to take from these inquiries? 1 out of 3, maybe?
Oh, yeah. It's pretty bad. Yeah, you're right about that. So the conversion from inquiry to actual lead is way low. I don't know the exact number because it's only been about 10 days. I don't know how many days it's been. All I know is that we'll get a ton of leads. Like I can go on Thumbtack right now and there'll probably be 6 or 8 people in the past 2 hours that have reached out to us. So we're definitely qualifying those people. If they're interested in the way Thumbtack works is that you pretty much have to message them and they have to respond on the platform. And so it makes it really difficult. Smart homeowners will just put their personal number on there and let us call them or text them to schedule. But most of the homeowners just let Thumbtack do it. And they're giving a VoIP phone number that forwards that the communication is really disjointed. It still works, but it takes a lot more work to actually make that connection and schedule the appointment. You can try to do it on the platform, but this is one of those platforms don't do really well for home services because they just don't. They're connected to our Google calendars, but they're just not. The customer doesn't want to do that. We have to walk them through the process, and then some people are just, I've got one piece of vinyl siding. Can you come back out there? We don't do that. So there's a lot of, even though they'll say they need a roofer, that it'll be for vinyl siding. So there's a lot of, I'm going to say it's probably going to be between 10 and 15% of the inquiries will actually turn into appointments. And then out of those appointments, it'll be a lower number that will actually turn into proposals. And then we'll probably still close around 1 out of, it's probably 40% close rate. It's usually 40 to 45% is usually where we're going to be for something like this, where people really have a need. So we're definitely going to have a higher close rate once we finally get the proposals to those homeowners.
So I assume, like everything, speed to lead is critical on these type of leads, aren't they?
Yep. But you have to, for those platforms, you have to have like auto replies or at least templates already set up, which we do. But if they're reaching out to you after hours and you don't have somebody, I mean, a lot of people are reaching out to us like, 11 o'clock at night or not at 10, like we're not going to respond then. So,
so what's the automation for that? How do you do that?
Unfortunately for LSA, local service ads, for Thumbtack and for Yelp, you can't integrate. It's on purpose and it's a smart thing from their perspective because you won't have really any spam, hopefully, fingers crossed. So Proline or any other platform can't really integrate. So it does take Kathleen receiving the text message and then responding to the text message to actually start that process.
And then I assume you can say 24 hours, whatever, you can name your times and
so we're not going to have any same day scheduling. It's going to be minimum of 1 day scheduling from the time of the inquiry, but then we do let them know we'll get the estimate to them within 24 hours of the appointment. So sometimes that means if they reach out to us, like, I don't know, let's call it right now, 2:00 on Thursday. If they schedule 2:00 Friday, it's actually likely that we will have their estimate to them on Friday. because we'll already have, if they're pre-qualified, we're going to order the estimate, the measurements, and we're going to start the proposal. So they're going to at least have that estimate right away. Now there is a little, there's a kink in this whole thing. Since I don't use SunX anymore for Xactimates, we're in the process of working with other vendors to help us write Xactimates for insurance. For the most part right now, we're writing retail estimates, but we're probably going to have to write some Xactimates, as those estimates will probably get denied, or there'll be some differences in pricing because we're giving a retail estimate, good, better, best option. The insurance company is looking for like an Xactimate exact price, one thing. It's going to be back and forth. This is why I don't love insurance. I like retail because it's just straightforward.
Yeah, you don't like insurance, do you? Explain that a little more. Some people just love insurance, think it's so profitable.
Well, I mean, it sounds good, and I think that a lot of salespeople can make money if they get paid by their owners. Mm-hmm. I think that it's a pretty solid chance you're going to make six figures if you're good at insurance sales. Where the companies get in trouble why the companies don't pay people is because they see, let's call it $6,000 of profit, and they're like, okay, that's a lot of money. But then they just don't do the math on if they do a 10-50-50 split or whatever it is. Let's call it $10,000 profit. Like, we're going to make $5,000 of profit. It just takes so much more to run that lead, and the number of jobs that are actually hitting $10,000 of gross profit is very low. There are definitely people that specialize in this. I just think that people overestimate the actual profit dollars, and then they'll hire, public adjusters, and then there'll be superintendents, and there'll be canvassers. I mean, there's another company in the Savannah market that's a very good company, and I asked them like how they're getting so many leads, and they brought in 4 door knockers. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people to generate leads that you have to pay. And then there's salespeople, and then there's project managers. You go down the line, there's a lot of people to sell one roof. So the goal is, and a lot of people talked about this for several years, is revenue per capita in your business. So how much revenue, and you got to hit a minimum profit margin. Obviously you have to do that. And I know we say a lot higher, but I'm going to give people a lot of grace and say 30% gross profit now. I think it's a really competitive market now. And if you can hit 30%, then I think you're at the bottom, but at least you're going to survive. But then you have to look at it from a revenue per capita. So every $1 million, your gross profit's $300,000. Well, how many people are in your organization, and how many millions of dollars are you selling and producing each year? That's a really good indicator of how healthy your business is, as long as you're hitting those profit margins. And I think when you have a big team, a big canvassing team, your revenue per capita is very low. You're like below $500,000. It's like, what? That doesn't work, because then you're only making $150,000 of gross profit per person. And it's very difficult to run a business with that. It's almost impossible. So I've been thinking about that quite a bit, where you have to break that $500,000 per capita. It's got to really be probably closer to 750 at a 30% margin. Let's call it 33% margin. So 750 will be $250,000 of profit. That's kind of the minimum you can do. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can't be much lower than that.
And from a cash flow standpoint, I mean, you're always waiting for your money. They're always screwing with your money. It just seems like a real problem. Unless you're really capitalized as you should be, you're going to be struggling cash wise.
Yep. And all of those things are connected. The revenue per capita is connected to that issue. We're like, why do we not have any money? It's because there's not enough profit per person, because every single person is a financial drain to the business if they're not producing. And you have to produce at a high level. Like, that's why, I mean, $1 million really should be the minimum for every salesperson. That if you can't produce it, then something's wrong with marketing. I mean, obviously there's other things involved, like your acquisition cost can't be $5,000. Mm-hmm. Your acquisition cost can't be $2,500, and you can't be spending a bunch of money on pay-per-click ads and then your close rate low. And it's not just one thing. You can't just say revenue per capita. You have to have a low acquisition cost, a high profit margin, and all those things have to be connected. Otherwise, you just won't have any money. There won't be any money left.
Yeah, we have a lot of guys, that we work with. They're always talking about, oh, I'm going to hire door knockers, going to do this, going to do that. Well, you're right. I mean, it's just jacking up your acquisition cost.
Yep.
And, when you're starting with low margins to begin with, it's tough to make a living.
Yep. And people think, okay, like I know I've heard all kinds of numbers about how people pay for appointments and then pay if the job sells. Sometimes I hear it's like $500. I'm like, okay, so you have to sell a $5,000 gross profit job. Let's just call it 15 grand. It better be 15 grand and it better be $5,000 of profit. You just gave away 10% of your profit to the canvasser. What about the salesperson? Now, then what about your superintendent? If you've got that, like, okay, well now we're down to like, okay, we just gave away 35 or 40% of the profit for the job. And then we haven't even paid taxes. We haven't paid insurance yet. Like what's going on? Like people just don't get that part where you need to be profitable. I was saying this yesterday in the mastermind where transparency is really, really helpful because you want your team to want the company to be profitable. And there's no way to trick people into that. They just need to understand that you're investing into them using things that really make their lives better. It could be technology. It could be a marketing campaign. It could be nice vehicles. It could be tools that they need to do their job well. There's all kinds of things, but you want your team to want the company to be successful and make a lot of money and not resent you as the owner for making a lot of money because you're making their life way easier than it would be somewhere else.
Now, there's a real problem about business owners paying their sales guys. Now, since this show is all about experience, you have some experience in that, don't you, John, that you can share with us as far as not getting paid?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've not been paid. I feel like my story is like lots of people's stories where you work at a previous employer. They owe you a bunch of money. You know the numbers because you can see the budgets. And again, we're very transparent using Proline because we have all the receipts for all the material. And then everyone on the team knows how much the crew's getting paid. So there's no one's in the dark for every single job. Everyone on the team knows how much gross profits on the job. Yeah. So like I've had that experience and many other people in our mastermind and just people that you coach. Like, yeah, I was at this other company and they owed me X and they kept kicking the can. It's because there's just not enough profit. There's too many people and there's not enough profit per job and there's no money left over. And it's not necessarily like owners buying boats or Corvettes, but that's a bad idea to do. But it's more just like not understanding the actual net profit at the end of the job. Like how much is actually left over and what did this really cost? And I think bringing it back to acquisition costs, Brad Akers really shed some light on me this year, realizing I'm not immune to the $1,500 acquisition cost. And that's probably still where it is. Even with these inexpensive ways that I'm doing business, let's just call this. Okay, let's just break this down. This is just me. I know there's other people, but if you get a lead and let's call the lead a referral. So let's just go the most extreme case. Well, the referral still costs something because you built a relationship with someone else. There is a cost to that. Okay, well then let's get in the truck. Let's go to the vehicle. Let's go to the appointment. You're paying your people, whether it's hourly or they're trying to make a salary. This is not, you cannot just say, oh, it's free. It's not, nothing's free. Nothing is free at all. Just getting there. All right. Well, then most people use a measurement tool. And so they're paying money for the measurement. And then they're also paying money if they're doing insurance work, they're probably paying for an Xactimate. And that's probably $100 to $200 an Xactimate. So then you're already $150 to $250 in before you even sent a proposal out. Well, then you have software to write your proposal. Okay, well, all that's in it. Then you have phones. So it's not a crazy thing to say, just on the scratching the surface that each one of those leads cost $300. It's not a crazy thing. So then, well, do you close every job? Well, no. I don't close the ones that I don't want. Okay, whatever. You still taking time. You're still getting Eagle views. You're still getting GF quick measures. You're still investing in that proposal. Not to mention the person that answers your phone. I'm still paying Kathleen. She gets paid per hour. Same thing. So many things going on that it's likely that you close 1 out of 3. So that $300 lead turns into a $900 acquisition cost. You're I can't see how you're not spending $900 to acquire one customer. I just don't see how it's possible. I don't care if you're getting straight referrals. You're spending money in some way to get that lead, to get the actual customer. You are. So I know we've been over this quite a bit, but I think that people need to understand that even in the door knocking ability, I didn't even talk about I didn't talk about like a lead cost. Like we're paying for Thumbtack, we're paying for Yelp. I didn't talk about we're paying for PPC or LSA. None of that. That's not even included. It's $300. There's just It just is. We're just talking about surface level things. So that was a big eye opener for me to make sure that, and communicating that to my team was a really big thing. And over continually reminding them, hey, did you close every single one of your leads? No, I didn't. Well, that costs money. And Kathleen seeing it, Clay and Cameron seeing it, they understand the money leaves the bank account. They can see it. I mean, Kathleen can see it right on the lead, how much that lead costs from Thumbtack. So she knows, like, well, if we don't close this one, we're going to lose $79 plus the measurements. And she sees that too. So like, it's good to be as transparent as possible so people understand how much it costs to actually get on that roof and replace it.
Sure. Well, it's and so difficult right now. You know, we've got fewer and fewer leads for the most part, and we've got to do more with those leads. And that's what Brad was talking about. He comes up with some higher numbers. I mean, it was like $1,200 for customer acquisition. And I mean, that's huge. So, and it wasn't that long ago where we were drunk with leads, right? We had so many leads coming in, you know, you're just kind of like, whatever, you know. Well, those leads cost you money somehow to get those people to call you. You're paying for that. So, you know, but this all comes back down to the reason why everybody, you know, so many contractors go out of business. They don't understand these numbers. And so they say, oh, well, I don't really have any overhead. It doesn't cost me anything. Well, yes, it does. And then the next thing they know, they can't realize, they don't realize why they don't have any money, why they're losing their ass, and they go out of business. And I think, and I don't know, you would probably know better than I, but I think so many storm contractors go out of business, you know, because it seemed to be a revolving door. You know, you see this, go, hey, we can make some quick money, and then boom. Or you run into like what Colorado had. I mean, it didn't storm for 3-4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
And everybody died, you know, because they didn't have a retail model set up and prepared to do that. And it's just going out and doing the storms. So you got to understand your costs. You've got to charge the right price for your business. And this is, you know, not to go down this road, but that's the problem about people say, oh, you know, yeah, I'm just figuring, you know, $400 a square, whatever the hell it is, you know, and that has nothing to do with your costs. You have to understand your costs of doing business, and everybody's is different. That's why pricing has to reflect that. Otherwise, you're just not going to make any money. I mean, it's crazy.
Yep, it is. And even going back to the price per square thing, even if you know to the dollar how much, well, let's say you average it and you know, okay, it's going to cost me X per square for material, and you know how much you pay your labor because this is all, majority everything is subcontracted in the entire country. So you know it costs me X to produce these roofs, and you have all your numbers all in there and everything. That's great. Okay. Then you get emotional about it because you're like, well, I'm going to make $150 a square, a profit. Like, you're not thinking about this in the whole list. You're talking about direct cost. Then you're not talking about the actual overhead that you carry. And then how many jobs like that are you going to do per month, per week? Like, you can't just think about that. Well, that's so much money. I'm making $150 a square. No, it's not. It is not, because you have massive costs. You almost certainly have $15,000 of overhead every single month. If you don't have a real business at all. Like, you're not adding it up. You're not adding it up. You just go through, your cell phone bill and your vehicle payments and your insurance and your office rent and all that stuff that you got. Okay, I don't have an office. Okay, just break it down as much as you want. You have to have that kind of overhead to actually have a functional machine that's a business. And you on top of that, let's say you don't. Let's say you're so wrong, John. Okay, you should want that. You should want that, because otherwise, if you get hurt or sick or anything, there's nothing. You have a job. It's worse than a job, because you have something that could actually lose you money every month, because you're taking all this risk. You need to want to build a business to sell one day, even if you're never going to sell it. You need to build a machine, and it doesn't have to be a big one, but it needs to be a machine that runs without you.
You got to have a plan. Lately, we've been working with a lot of contractors that are just starting up in business, whether they, and so many of these guys, they come from other industries. They don't really understand. And this is where you've got these franchises. I cannot understand these for the world. Okay. You got Mighty Dog, for instance. Okay. I'm working with a contractor in Florida, and there's probably a dozen of these franchises in Florida. And he's telling me half of them are going out of business. They're just closing down, and they're giving these territories back. So he's got an opportunity to buy all these territories up on the cheap. You just don't come into this business and say, well, this is easy. I'm going to run this. I used to be in marketing, or I was a scientist or whatever. It's, I'd like to have a job that I have control over, my time, my money. No, you don't. It's crazy, and you got to start off with, and this is where I say we'll start off with, okay, what's it going to cost you to keep the doors open for starters? You go back and figure that out, see what your costs are going to be. Well, they come back, and then we start going through this and go, well, how about this? How about that? How about this? How about that? These are costs that you're going to have that you didn't foresee. And this is what happens. They're just, it's tough to make any money. So, okay, so I guess you've got enough leads or whatever. You're going to be able to handle these for the next 6 months or so. And that's kind of how your business is going to go.
Probably. And then we hopefully will get these apartment complexes probably starting in February. So things are definitely looking up for next year. But yeah, this will be a long time. This will be a lot of people. I foresee a lot of these homeowners we've already had denials from financing. So I foresee a lot of these people not replacing their roof, and they just can't do it. And it's really sad, because these deductibles on the coast are crazy. Like $11,000 deductible for a $15,000 roof. Right. Okay, well, no one in the world, I don't care how much of a chuck in a truck, you're going to replace that roof for $4,000. You're not doing it. You should be wise as a homeowner, and you should actually do the right thing by your roof and protect your home. Have a small monthly payment, easy payment plan for your roof. You need to do that. That should be because otherwise the cheap jackleg guys they're going to cost you so much money. They're going to cost you so much money. We go to so many roofs all the time, all types of roofs, big roofs, small roofs. And they're like, this roof is only 3 years old, or this room is only 5 years or 6 years old, and it's leaking, and it's installed all wrong. And there is nothing we can do. We can't put a Band-Aid on it, something that's installed incorrectly. So that's the scenario for a lot of people in the country, especially the Southeast. They're going to, it's been a rough economic time for them. Their credit is bad, and now they can't qualify for financing. Right. So we're going to be working through that whole process.
All right. Well, not everybody in the country is dealing with these storms and so forth, but we're coming into the fourth quarter here, fourth quarter of the year. We've really got to keep the gas on. How are you going to end up? How's this going to shake out? You need to have your plan together and see what's happening. Now, also, something that is so important that people don't think about, it's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep. This is this time to start thinking about your taxes, your tax advantages, which there are so many in this business, okay? In construction, home service, any small business. And there are ways that you can really reduce your taxes that are legit, but you've got to have somebody that understands that. You've got to talk with either a good tax attorney, somebody that understands, tax accountant, got to understand taxes. You can really save a lot of money. Why pay all this money in taxes. So that's something and you can't wait until the end of the year when it's over. This is the time to be thinking about it. This is why planning is so important, because you're not going to waste this money. Thoughts on John?
Yeah. So 3 different options, just thinking about this. Buy a building. If you've got a bunch of extra cash, buy a building.
Yep.
That's a good but you may not be in that situation. Like, I don't want to go through the process. I don't have a place to buy. I don't know what to do. A second option, less desirable, but still really effective, is buy either equipment or vehicles that are over 6,000 pounds. That's another thing that you can do. I know a lot of guys do this, but make it make sense. It's buying real estate's way better idea. But at least set yourself up from an equipment or vehicle. If you have any mechanical issues that just keep lingering, don't do that for the next year. Don't have that. You need to be on the road, no issues. And then third, and the easiest option that I can think of is buying marketing material like postcards. You can bulk buy. Almost any supplier will be like, yeah, they'll send you an email probably in November too. Like, hey, you want to buy 50,000 postcards? And you're like, well, I got $45,000 right now. I don't want to pay tax on that. And so you pre-buy the credits for all those postcards. Don't pay taxes on that because it becomes an actual expense for you. And you can benefit from those cards the next year whenever your season. If you're in the winter time and you're in a northern climate, start sending the postcards out in whenever you're supposed to, March or April, whenever you start again. That's a really easy way, low-hanging fruit, to not pay. If you have any, you can take a distribution too if you want to do that. But I think spending money on marketing like that is a fantastic way to jumpstart your next year.
You want to bring expenses into this current year. You want to push off income, anything that you can, into the next year.
Yeah.
I want to say something about buying property, buying a building. This was the best thing. One of the best things that I ever did was buying a building for our business. And something that is so important, you don't want company owning real estate. It only screws up the sale. But, and it doesn't make any sense. You want to break that off. That's your personal, set up an LLC for that. You can get SBA money to buy it. So there's a lot of options to do. And we got a pretty big building that I was scared to death when I bought this thing. However, we were able to rent it out, and then eventually take over the whole place. And California real estate prices, after 25 years, is just a fantastic investment. So these are things that you want to look at. You got to make sure that you can afford it, because your business is going to be paying rent to you. And so if it's going to crush the company, not a good idea. The other thing that we did is that when we purchased big equipment, or say a lot of equipment, we would set up an LLC to do that, and we would put it into a leasing company, separate company. And again, we were able to have the tax advantages. We leased that equipment back to the business, and it all worked out great. And you can do this with a lot of things, because it's the operating company that you want to keep, assets out of. And also, if the bank ever comes after your business, or you get sued or whatever, you've got everything protected. It's just the operating company that you're dealing with. So those are just a few things. There's a million of them. The Augusta Rule, that's always been my favorite. So, all these guys that have property at Augusta, they all got together and said, hey, we're going to rent these houses out. We're going to have our parties there. So the business pays you tax-free to have a party rather than renting a place out. And you can do that up for 13 days a year. So Augusta Rule, check into it. There's so many of these tax advantages. We had a show on, a while ago, and we just listed them all out, and it was great. So you want to keep as much money as you can. You're working your ass off. Don't pay more than you need to. So that's that. And now we're coming into the next year, and yeah, it seems like a long ways off, but we got to start thinking about this. We got to formulate our business plan. We always talk about the business plan. You want to start ahead and things that are so important. What do you see your business? Is it, are sales going to increase? Are you going to, whatever it is, are you going to hire additional people? You've got to budget that in because that's going to change your break even cost. You have to understand what it's going to be. Otherwise, you get too many people in here. And the next thing you know, you're not making any money and you're stuck. You're saddled with this big overhead. That's why, like John, I mean, I love SMA, virtual assistants, where, shit hits the fan. You can always stop that service. Getting rid of a person is a lot more difficult. But if you're going to have to do that, you want to do that quick. There's a saying that if you've got to cut back, you want to cut quickly and you want to cut deep and don't have to do it again and again. But you've got to really watch your costs. Who knows what's going to happen here in this next year, but things are, still pretty dicey, man. You don't know. So in those situations and in every situation, you want to keep your overhead down low. You want to run a lean machine. That's how you run a profitable business. But you start buying boats and all this crap and you're not paying attention. What I see is when you have a big storm or whatever, people start they throw people at these problems. So the next thing you know, storm's gone, things slow down, and now you're stuck with this big overhead. And it burns through. By the time they make a move, it's 6 months too late. It always surprises me. They just don't stay on top of it and understand how costly that is, because generally we find that, when we do our org chart, there's so many overlapping, tasks and so forth that, if you were starting from scratch and filling in and coming up with these positions, you wouldn't have all those. So run lean, run profitable. John, anything else to add to this?
People are expensive. They better be a huge benefit. They better be a good team member. It can't just be mediocre. You can't. You gotta take ownership as a leader and train them and understand the process that you have in your company and fill the gap. Whatever the gap is, whatever part of the process, make sure that person is excellent to fill that gap. If they're not moving the needle in the right direction, which is more profitable, better time spent for all team members. Like you said, hire slow, fire fast, understand what you need, who you need, the type of personality type you need, do personality tests. There's a lot of things you can do to interview a lot, recruit a lot, make sure they're a good fit. And the recruit may be a good fit, but it may not be the right time for them. There's a lot of times where people will be a good fit, but they're not really prepared. There's lots of times where I've met with people and they're like, this person will probably be good in a few years or 2 years or a year from now or whatever it is. It's hard. It's hard to do it. It's hard to hire the right people. It's also hard to understand what you need, but you've got to continually understand that. Like, what would help this person in my business? They're spending too much time doing X and they need to be doing the other thing. And does a person or does a tool or software, can that help that person be more efficient?
Hey, we're big ones for outsourcing, whether it's Ruby Receptionist to answer your phone, it's SMA to run your inside sales. Use these, ProLine automations. It just makes things so much easier and you don't need the people. Rather than having the Full Employment Act. I mean, think real hard before you do that, because the cost of a bad hire is astronomical. When you consider the time that you're going to spend in trying to find somebody, you bring them on, you're going to have to train them, and they turn out to be mediocre, generally you hang on to them too long. You go, God, at least I got somebody in here. I don't want to have to go through this again. Well, you're going to end up having to get somebody else and get rid of that person. And it is going to cost you a fortune. And it sucks the life out of you too. I mean, you should be spending your time on things that matter. And when you're doing that, wasting this time on the wrong person, it is bad news. So, all right, well, let's wrap that up. We'll let you get back to your storms, and hopefully everything's okay down there. And one last thing, we did a podcast just last week on how to hire A players, and we went through this and Paul Sandeman with Contractor Staffing Source. It was great, and you guys should listen to that. They talk about, if you're going to do it yourself, here's how you do it. And if you're going to want to hire an agency like Paul's, he's got a great model. It's a subscription model. It's not pay per person. So you guys really want to check that out, and that will really help. Be careful about that. Get on the program with your CPA, whatever, do it now. Start planning for next year, and let's grind this thing out and have 2024 being our best year ever. Deal? Let's do it.
Deal.
All right. Hard. Good to see you, John. We'll see you next week on The Roofer Show.
Bye, everybody.